Everybody. Our session today is breaking into tech. So I'm the employee relations manager, working with the tech team, and I'm just going to pass on to my fellow co-host today, Chloe.
Hi everybody, my name's Chloe Chambers. I head up the MSc Careers provision here at Imperial College Business School, and today I'm going to be chatting with Bap, who will introduce himself in a moment, about all things tech, applications, interview and transitioning into that sector, focused conversation.
Thank you, Chloe. So I'm a previous student from Imperial. My name is Baptiste. I graduated from the business school in economics and strategy for business. And as of present, I work for TikTok in strategy analytics.
Perfect. Thank you to you both. So let's just dive straight into the questions. And on the first section, it's going to be about CVs. So in your opinion or your expert advice, Chloe, how should students structure their CVs? How many pages should they aim for?
Yeah, so working in a careers team at a business school, the majority of students are coming to us with internship experience, but not a huge amount of long stretched out permanent roles behind them. So typically we would expect, if a student's targeting the UK, we would expect to see a one-page CV. So what you need your CV to be able to do is really talk to the recruiter and explain the skill set that you have developed. So even if your experience isn't necessarily relevant or you know you're applying to a different sector, you're not coming from the tech sector, your skill set needs to be very, very apparent. So typically we would expect your education to be at the top, as that's what you're currently doing if you're currently studying. And then any involvement within your sort of academic experience. So if you're involved in any clubs and things like that, I would have that highlighted at the top. And you go into your professional experience, so your work experience, even if that's voluntary, but any kind of professional setting in your work experience would then be listed. And then you would follow up on the bottom with your skill set. That could be technical, then your language skills. And if you have the space, you would have your extracurricular at the bottom. So I'd always prioritize, if you have it, the professional experience. That's what the bulk of your CV should cover. That's what it's there for. But typically that format on a one page would be suffice when targeting the UK, complemented with a cover letter.
And is there a difference if you are a student coming in with a few years experience and therefore you can't put it all into, you know, one page or 2 pages? Is that going to go against the student in some way if they've got quite a lot of experience?
No, definitely not. I mean, the more experience you have, the better, and you know that can be a real advantage, obviously. But what you want is to make your CV as easy for the recruiter to sort of comprehend. So if your CV doesn't stretch out to 2 full pages, I would say do what you can to reduce it to 1 page. You don't want a page and a half of CV. And what sometimes I see students try and do is make sure that their most recent experience has a certain amount of bullet points explaining their experience, and then, you know, something that they may have done 5 or 6 years ago have the same level of content. The thing to prioritize is what you've done most recently, because that will generally be the most aligned, or what you're doing in that role or what you're applying for. The things that you were doing 5 or 6 years ago, that skill set will be assumed. So as you progress, the further back in your CV things start to become more obsolete. So if you were to prioritize and reduce the content to 1 page, that's where you would be able to bring things down. I would definitely say some of the content around academic experience, I do see students really pad out a lot of the module detail for their undergrad or awards and scholarships and things like that. And that can be very, very helpful. But a lot of the time you can put that information into sort of application forms and online applications rather than using that space on your CV. So again, that can be a space-saving technique, is to not necessarily prioritize a lot of that content. Pick out the core modules that you might want to showcase in your CV, and especially for the course that you're currently doing.
And can I ask, what are some of the common mistakes or pitfalls that you see with CVs the first time around?
I think, you know, whenever you are making an application, you will generally need a different CV. So obviously the bulk of your experience will stay the same, but every single CV that you submit should be tailored to the opportunity that you're targeting. So I think that's probably the biggest pitfall, is that students they underestimate, or candidates, I should say, underestimate the power of really matching your CV to the opportunity. So reflecting the language, making sure the skill sets are being covered, and you're mirroring that opportunity. So your role in the application process is to, like I said before, make the recruiter's role as easy as possible for them to identify why you're applying, the skill set that's relevant, and your cover letter will be able to showcase the motivation. So I think, that just assuming that a generic, or your general CV fits for every opportunity you're targeting, it's not the way it works, and time needs to be spent to make sure that you're responding to that particular job spec or job description, and allowing your CV to show that, yes, you understand what the job spec's asking for, and this is why you're applying, because you've got the skill set that's most relevant.
And can I just ask, with regards to cover letters, is it always a good idea when you're applying for a role to add a cover letter, even if they haven't asked you for one, or should you just stick to the instructions? If they've asked for a CV, just provide a CV?
Yeah, this question comes up a lot. I'm talking about, I suppose, the bulk of students we see are applying to roles in the UK, and I think cover letters really do have a place. I think your CV can explain what your experience is, what your skill set is, what your academic background is, and what you've got to offer from a sort of a professional skill set. What your cover letter can do is convey your understanding of the organisation. It can convey your motivation for applying and give them a sense of who you are, and you just cannot get that across in a CV very easily. The other thing a cover letter can do is it can really, if you do it well, it can show the recruiter that you understand the value and where the role that you're applying for is positioned within the business. Again, that can be something that can be really underestimated. Whether or not you have to submit a cover letter can be very dependent on the company. I would always assume that, yes, it's worth doing, it's worth pulling one together, because even doing that exercise can help you with interview material. It can help you get your mind ready to answer some of those questions around why you're applying, what do you know about us. If it is quite clear that no, we don't expect a cover letter, we don't accept cover letters, take that at face value and follow the instructions, just get your CV in. A lot of the time, if that's the case, a company will have a piece on their application platform where you can fill in your motivations. The other thing I was just going to mention is that a cover letter can, if a cover letter is accepted, it can be the deciding factor between you getting an interview and someone else. So I would always assume that the competition is as fierce as possible. And if you're the candidate of the two who's taken the time to write down why you're applying and to give them a little bit more context as to who you are and what your story is, that may be what gets you the interview over someone else.
Perfect. So you've applied to the job with the perfect CV, with the perfect cover letter, and then the next step is you're invited for the interview. So over to you, Bat. What can students expect if they've applied to a tech giant and they're at the interview stage?
Sure. So if we look at the frame of, like, let's say, graduate roles, which are often like an analyst, business analyst, you could expect 3 to 5 rounds. The rounds will be sort of like going in crescendo. So the first round is usually just like a basic HR interview, which actually can last 15 minutes to 30 minutes. I think the reason for this is just making sure that you are who you said you were. They often in the UK test for English skills, because sometimes you have brilliant candidates on CVs, but they don't speak like perfect English. So this is one of the reasons. So this first step is usually quite sort of like easy. And you can expect questions like, you know, why you want to work for the company. A good rule here is like always come up with 3 things. Like the rule of 3 is really applicable and make you sound very structured. And then the second, third, fourth round, they tend to be under sort of 3 buckets. There's one which is like more, we call them market sizings. So they are questions like how many ping pong balls can you fit in a double decker? You know, the country of, I don't know, Morocco needs a new bank. How would you sort that out? Like there are questions that are quite business focused, but also they try to test out your math skills. And a good advice here is every time somebody asks you one of these questions, and this is a pitfall, people try to answer straight away. And the real good, strong candidate would first sort of like clarify questions and then say like, okay, I just need 30 seconds to sort of like think about how I'm going to go about it, and then explain the process. So that was the first bucket, like more market sizing. The second bucket is sort of related, but it can be like, they're called like bigger case studies. So market sizing usually lasts 10, 15 minutes. The big cases, they can last 1 hour. And, you know, for big tech giants, it's like, okay, we're launching, you know, this feature. We want to assess the profitability of it, or we want to understand the return on investment of this, or we want to understand the cost associated with removing this. And they follow sort of the same format as market sizing. So you start with clarifying the question, asking for a bit of time to structure your thoughts, and then sort of like develop your case study. Here, my advice would be that it's really more of a conversation. Like the candidates that do well, make it more of a conversation. So that's the second part. And the third part is more wanting to understand like maybe like the team player attitude, like how you are just as a human being. And here my advice is don't try to sound too smart. I've actually fell into the trap of wanting to overshow, like, you know, like being a team member, being a good active power, but you know, you can shoot yourself in the foot because you're claiming somebody that you're not yet. So that would be my last advice on this. And just to finish up, so past the HR and then all the rounds, I think the rounds usually follow the format of maybe like an analyst or an associate. Then you may get actually your hiring manager as like one of the interviews. And the last person tends to never really be the hiring manager, but your manager's manager. So it sort of goes like this.
And with regards to, you mentioned obviously market sizing will be one of the questions that you'll get asked. How do you then, as a student, prepare yourself to answer those questions as effectively as possible, or is there a way to prepare for those type of questions?
Yes, so I think there's essentially two ways to go about it. I think there's the offline way. So the offline way in this, I would see like two buckets. I would say one, just reading some of the books. So I forgot some of the names, but I think there's like Crack the Case or Breaking the Interview, whatever. They can easily be found with a Google search. And you first practice by yourself on this. And then the second bucket within the offline is trying to practice with like friends, colleagues, I mean, not colleagues, but like, you know, like maybe a professor, maybe somebody who is already in that position you want to, like a mentor. And the online way, I've seen some really great YouTube videos. I prepared quite a lot on YouTube, and yeah, there's great YouTubers out there with like really insightful like case studies, and they really help you out and show you like what are the good ways and the bad ways to do it.
Brilliant. And then what do you think big tech is looking for in a candidate? Is there specific skills that they're looking for students? And how can a student kind of make themselves stand out in a crowd of everybody's got the same qualifications and skills?
So I think the way to really stand out, and this is relevant for any job going from analyst, business intelligence analyst, data analyst, is really your ability to structure. I think there's a huge shift in the industry where there's a lot of consultants that used to be like sort of like the golden age of consulting, and a sort of like new job description for being a consultant is data analyst, because now you have access to data and you can make easy analysis on Excel, whatever. And so a way to really stand out in front of all of this is still the consulting approach to structure problems. In my personal case, I managed to get some of the opportunities I got because the interview told me like, you know, you were lacking on this, maybe your technical skills were not up to par on this, but when we asked you this question, you were very, very structured. And I think this is why maybe some of these BCG, McKinsey interviews are so difficult, is because they really manage to break down who is best at structuring complex problems. So that's the first way to differentiate yourself. And the second way that I see now is a good opportunity for people is actually growing on the technical side. So as I just mentioned, there's a lot of like intertwining happening between the consulting, old school consulting jobs, and now the data jobs. It's becoming very, very similar. And so a way to sort of like, you know, get represented better or higher is actually learning some technical skills on the side. And you don't need to, you know, be a math genius. Like I for instance have like a little TikTok account that I make videos with Tom, and it's just like how to self-learn. You don't need to go to a tech university to learn, for instance, languages like SQL. SQL is a language, a querying language that essentially through lines of code retracts data from a company's database. And I see a lot of now strategy position who, you know, if you have SQL as part of your technical tool set, you will be regarded higher, and you'll definitely get like an interview. And obviously the creme de la creme would be if you know a bit of Python. And again, Python you can learn on YouTube. You can do little online courses on platforms like Coursera, Udemy. They cost 10 euros. It gives you a little certificate. And I think this is a way you can stand out.
That's really great advice. And I think for a lot of students who may not come from a technical background but want to go into a technical role, that's really great to hear as well. You mentioned case studies sometimes being involved during the interview process. How do you prepare for something like that as well?
So I think, and I hope this comes as a message of hope, it's just practice. I am so bad. I failed so many. I remember I managed to get an interview with BCG, and I completely destroyed both interviews just because I wasn't good enough. I hadn't prepared enough. And to give a bit of like realism on the table, I did, I think, about 60 case studies, like really like interviewing with a friend or somebody that was better. And maybe somebody listening to that is like, oh, you know, he's clearly very dumb. But like maybe I am, but even if I'm not the best at this, it seems like still like just putting effort into it managed you to, you know, still get into like the position. And actually, just speaking out loud, I realized that maybe the consulting structuring approach is not like the level is not as high in tech companies than in consulting. So I would imagine like if you practice enough, you try consulting interviews and then you fail, it does not mean that you can't go for strategy at YouTube, Facebook, or whatnot. In fact, I think it makes you a really good candidate if you combine this with a few courses of SQL or Python. Yeah, you'll be like a good candidate if you did that.
And just from I guess from a personal point of view, when you're applying to these tech giants, and you might have 3 or 4 interviews coming up, how do you kind of prepare yourself mentally to be able to cope with all of those different interview stages, and keep on top of things whilst also at the same time you'll be studying as well?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I don't know if I'm suitable to answer that question, because I remember, okay, maybe the way to answer this is like, it's absolutely okay to freak out, because I remember in our course, all of us freaked out. It was the daily life for everybody. And actually, I was very worried because I would say from a percentage point of view, like I would say 80% in my cohort at least had a job by the time, you know, like they graduated or like within a month. and I was one of the rare ones that took more time. I think I took like 4 months, and then I got on my job at Uber, like in as an intern for strategy actually. And I would just say like it's okay. We all go through it. Meditate, go for a run. Dogs, cats, they're very nice. They give energy. But yeah, you're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe one last word of advice is I found that the people that didn't get a job straight away before graduating tended actually to get a sort of like better job. So if you're one of the candidates who still didn't get a job by May, June, July, whatever, don't worry, because there's actually a higher chance that you get something better because you have practiced more and more interviews, etc.
That's some great advice, not to panic. And can I just ask you, with regards from the careers perspective and the careers team, what services are there for students during their time at Imperial, Chloe? What sort of support could they expect? What sort of workshops or sessions can they expect during their time there?
Yeah, back I remember when he was at Imperial that I think careers for students who make the most of the time is actually quite a big part of their student experience. They're here for 1 year, so it goes obviously very quickly. And we get students to complete a careers primer before they start. So it means that they've gone through, they've done a lot of reflection, they've gone through, worked out what their values are, what their priorities are, and they start to set a strategy. And also they're sort of CV, well, they are CV ready really by the time they start the course. So the CV is, it goes through a process, and then through the year you can book in with a careers consultant to have that check, to work on it together to make sure you're stretching the skills and the experience in the right way for each opportunity. So there's a lot of application support, so we can help with cover letters, CVs. But students use careers for lots of different things. So it might be to come and do a practice presentation. It might be for interview practice, case interview practice, mock interview practice. So there's a lot of general careers sessions, and then there is sector support. So you might find there's skill sessions specific to technology, or there's we'll have panel events, we'll have alumni come back. We will do interview sessions on a particular type of interview with a particular type of employer. So we try and tailor the student experience and what they're targeting as much as possible. So yeah, general career support and sector specific career support is how we best serve students, best try and work with students. A lot of this is front loaded, so a lot of the sort of heavy application interview prep is done during the autumn term to sort of align with the recruitment market here, but the advice and the support and the offering is ongoing through the year, and then as alumni as well, they can access a lot of the services that we deliver.
And the services, that's going to be continue to be hybrid, correct?
Yeah, so it's yeah, I suppose it in response to the last couple of years, and we've, like most employers have really had to change the way we deliver sessions. So we do a lot of online small group activities. We do a lot of online workshop delivery, one-to-ones, but we still very much have a presence on campus, and yeah, face-to-face offering is for some students really preferred as well. So both is an option.
Brilliant. And with regards to yourself, Baptiste, what support did you seek from the career service? What helped you to get to your positions?
I think, and this is not like this is really, really true. Like I've received. I don't think I'll be where I am without the careers team, and Imperial didn't pay me to say that. It's true. No, it's like I was really, because before Imperial I was at a different university, and I really saw the difference of help. Like I think there's like 3 areas that really like helped me. Like the first one was the approachability and availability, which was really like, you need somebody, you can get it like within a week. It doesn't matter which topic it is, doesn't matter whether it's like TMT sector or retail, whatever, like you will have somebody that can help. So that was the first one. The second one was I was very much impressed by the the because I believe you still have this, like you can pass like mock interviews with the career team. For instance, practice on the market sizing and things like this. And that was really, really beneficial because as we just mentioned, in big tech, there are still a lot of market sizing questions, a lot of like case studies. So that really helped. And the third thing is like even after you graduate, they are here for you. So as I mentioned, I did not get a job straight away. I had to wait a couple of months before, and so the team was still there for me. I guess it was more like for mental support because back at this time, like the CV was done, the cover letter were done. So yeah.
That's really brilliant to hear. And then I guess with regards to you then, Baptiste, you mentioned that you're working now at TikTok. If you could just tell us a little bit about your day, what you do there, what your day-to-day looks like.
Sure. So currently I work at TikTok in the London office, and my position is it's called monetization strategy analytics. So you'll see that in the world of tech, now all positions are a bit the same, like again, that intertwined thing. So what I'm going to tell you about my day can be very different from company to company, but the high level thing is sort of there. So on a normal day or on a normal week, I would say there are like 2-3 things that we do majorly. So when you're a business analyst, data analyst, whatever, the first part is there's like a reporting, like presenting KPIs, numbers to like business leaders. So this could be shown in the form of dashboards. This could be shown in the form of like business trackers. So reporting is a big area. Depending on where you work, like TikTok is really, really good by automatizing everything. So a lot of the dashboards are automated, leaders are able to see them. And now it goes to the second part, which is like interpreting insights. So most big companies, I mean, all of them have like weekly reports, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, quarterly. And so as an analyst, data analyst, whatever, your job is going to be to analyze the past trends, give insights to leaders, what's good, what's bad, what can we work on. And the last one, and this is maybe more like data analysts, like maybe more analytics or maybe even data science. It's sort of like coding to get data engineered properly, build like complex models if you want to analyze something like in particular, or build a different sort of like data set so that XYZ team can utilize this. And the third part is, depending on some jobs, it could be fully just that, or it can be just a smaller part. But I would say like within the tech landscape in the UK, what I just said should be like relatively the same for whatever job you're going to. Just the percentage of time allocation may differ. And just to finish on an example, I wasn't super fond of business reporting because I used to work for a startup in Spain called Glovo, which is the equivalent of Deliveroo. And because they weren't at the scale of Facebook, whatever like this, reporting was a big part. So, my allocation on this was maybe 60%. But at TikTok, everything is super advanced, super like, they had the time to redevelop some really complex softwares. So my reporting time is 5%, 10%. So it really changes.
And can you just tell me how your time is distributed with terms of projects, any skills that you use or particular softwares that you use?
Sure. So my software allocation time currently at TikTok would be, so the main softwares I use is Google Spreadsheet or like Excel. But most big tech companies, we don't use Excel. We use like Google Spreadsheets. because like it has shareability advantages, like we can both work on the same Excel at the same time. So main softwares are Google Sheets, Excel. There's SQL to retrieve data. There's Python, and normally there's a visualization software. So there's many, depends on the company you work for, but they can be called Tableau, Power BI, Looker. In TikTok, it's called Aolus. So I would say that currently in my job, it would be maybe like 20-30% on SQL. Depends on the project, but maybe like 10%, 20% on Python. So we're now at like 40-50%. Excel is still like a big player because you can still do a lot of analysis, even complex one. So that would be 30% as well. And the visualization software, yeah, maybe as well 20%. So actually, it seems sort of like equally distributed, but depending on the project, you can go really big. And again, you know, if you pick somebody in my position in a different company, like for instance, I know I had interviews with Meta for like a data scientist position, which was again very strategy driven and stuff. I know that their time allocation was maybe more on 60% SQL. And again, just to point again on the fact that you can learn SQL just by learning it online, because it wasn't saying like, you know, you need a university degree from SQL, whatever. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Baptiste. And Chloe, I just want to come over to you with regards to networking and the power of networking as well. If you were to explain that to students, what does networking mean and how useful is it in this day and age?
Yeah, we push the importance of networking a lot in careers, partly because so many students who study with us are international students who don't come to London with a big network. So it's hugely important to start building that if you're especially if you're wanting to stay on in the UK afterwards, to start building that. I think it depends on the student, it depends on the candidate what style of networking they want to do. So I know for some students they really enjoy going to big events and trying to meet as many people as possible, but keeping the conversation quite sort of, I suppose, high level. And then others will get a lot more out of trying to arrange a one-to-one coffee chat. I think if you're trying to do that one-to-one conversation, it's really important to remember that the work is on you. So you're looking for that information, you're looking for insight. So go to that meeting. If somebody's carved half an hour out of their day, go to that meeting with an agenda. Go to a meeting expecting to be the one to steer the conversation. So I think that can be again sort of underestimated. So just make sure that you're sort of, even if the conversation goes off track, that you've got a set of questions, or you've got an idea of what you really want to get from the conversation, so that it's a good use of time for both of you. So think about the way that you enjoy networking, and it may be very different to the person sitting next to you in your classes. The power in networking is obviously that it can open your eyes to opportunities that you may not have heard of. It can teach you about companies you may not have known existed, and it can give you a real sense of understanding around what a particular role does and what the value of certain functions are within businesses the more people you talk to. Having worked with students for quite a long time now, I see when somebody has done a lot of networking, I see that they interview with a lot more confidence and credibility, because they have that more holistic understanding of what a business is doing, why a particular role is crucial to its success, and then they're able to interview to those questions really, really well. They're able to explain how that role adds value and what that role sort of does in the business, and why they're the best person to be able to then fulfill that opportunity. So I think the networking, yes, on surface levels, it's very much about finding opportunities and introductions and and that sort of obvious side. But I think a huge benefit is from networking really is the value in the learning and just being able to interview with a lot more credibility and obviously therefore confidence by speaking to as many people as you can. The other thing it can do, which ironically probably doesn't sound like a good use of time, is it can help you work out what you don't want to be doing. So the more people you speak with, the more clarity you have around what a business analyst does, or what a data scientist does, or what a product manager does. And the more time you spend learning about these different functions. And sorry, hot topic technology is letting me down. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there, but I think a lot of it is around really thinking of networking as a chance to build your knowledge as well as building your connections. So I hope that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I was just going to ask how important LinkedIn is in respect to networking now.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. I think the thing is it's only important if you're going to use it well. So either kind of have a presence on LinkedIn or it's not going to do anything for you. I'd say it can be really helpful in just keeping up with what's happening in a particular sector. So what, people of influence in an industry you're targeting, what their thoughts are, they can often be, really easy to find by following particular companies and brands on LinkedIn. So make sure that it doesn't just repeat your CV. So I see I have seen in the past a typical CV then basically copy and paste it into LinkedIn. And remember that your CV is a personal document and it's not something that you want accessible to everybody. So using LinkedIn to give a real summary of what your experience is, but you generally using LinkedIn is like quite a forward-thinking tool. So sharing what it is that you're looking for, sharing what it is that you can offer, sharing when you're available, and that's the way I think to use your LinkedIn when you're actively seeking a role as a graduate. Sharing what you're doing if you're involved in things on campus, or if you're going to particular industry events, let it be known that you're quite actively doing these things because you're committed to joining a particular sector. It's like anything, people will let you know what you tell them. So I'd say, use LinkedIn and let it work for you as much as possible.
Brilliant. And I know we got cut off a little bit there, but Baptiste, what about yourself? How has networking worked for you? How did you approach it? Do you use LinkedIn for it as well? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I do use I have used LinkedIn a lot, and it's really, really beneficial. Like there's this really cool trick, I think actually the careers team taught me, which is whenever you add somebody, so say you want to apply for Microsoft, you filter by people that did your university, so here Imperial. And the cool thing and the neat thing is you'll see everybody that was an Imperial alumni. And at this point, the trick is when you connect, you add a note and you say exactly this, like, hi, I'm whatever, comma, I am a fellow Imperial student or fellow XYZ University student, and I'm currently, or I'm about to apply for this. Could I speak to you about your experience within the firm? Thanks. No need to do a lot of exclamation point or whatever, like just keep it very sober. I think the success rate here is about like out of every 10 you send, you may get 2 to accept. And then the following thing is you should always try to ask for a call. So after they accept, hi, thank you so much for accepting. You send 2 availabilities. Could we speak about this together on Tuesday between 3 to 5 or Friday between blah? And then people, again, I would say 60% will get back to a you. And out of those 60%, maybe half are going to say, well, just ask me the question here. Those are not going to be amazing, but always ask 3 questions. And if not, and if it's successful, do go on the call. And here, this is the last thing. So you go on the call, you ask a few questions, and 2 things will happen. Either, you ask pertinent question or like competent question, and the person will say like, hey, I'm very happy referring you. That's the best possible outcome. But then you have to be a little bit shameless. Like if if the call went okay, you had a connection. I have in the past said like, do you think there's a possibility that you could refer me to the position? I could provide more credentials of my work, whatever like this. Or if you don't feel confident to do it on the phone, you can maybe ask to LinkedIn. And this has helped me, for instance, get referrals at Google and Facebook and etc. So these things really do work. This was a very long story to say that networking matters a lot. There's very cool, neat tricks to now talk to literally anybody on LinkedIn and get referrals for very, very prestigious jobs. So yeah.
Brilliant. And then coming towards the end, and just to talk about resources, are there any books or podcasts or YouTubers that you think would really help students to break into tech or try to work for tech giants or to improve their skills if they don't have those technical skills?
Chloe, do you want to share first what you think of all this?
Yeah, I'll let you share the resources that you'd suggest, but I think working in careers, what I think often surprises students at interview level is just how much they're tested around a particular product or a particular brand. And at interview, you may be even asked about why aren't you applying to our competitor? And so I think, again, that really pushes the point around understanding what's going on in the industry and not just having an understanding or sort of relaying what you've read recently, but really having an opinion on it. I think building into your everyday time to absorb information about what's happening, and especially for the tech sector, because obviously it moves so rapidly. If you can build that into part of your days, before you even come and join as a student, make sure that you're staying as current as possible. Again, it will feed into that sort of level of confidence that you have when interviewing. It will convince the person interviewing as well that you're as excited about technology as they are, and that's something that's really actively looked for when recruiters are looking for candidates in the tech sector. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is just to make sure that your knowledge is current. In terms of any suggestions regarding sort of podcasts, I'll let you answer that.
Sure. Okay, so adding on to what Chloe said, so I think on the technical side, there are interesting resources out there. So if you are trying to expand on your SQL skills, as I mentioned, you could go for courses on Coursera, Udemy. These are platforms that are really, really good. There's also a very interesting platform called EDX, where essentially it's other universities that just share like little diplomas for SQL or Python things, and they are usually free. I would also highly recommend YouTube. So it really depends on where you want to go, but like if you want to learn Python, there's this YouTuber called CS Dojo. He has like a beginner Python course, which is very good. Another very famous resources on this technical part is called Free Code Camp. It's just like I think almost 8 million followed YouTube channel that's just like talk about coding and anything, like data related, machine learning. It can go like depending on what you like. And then going back onto the case studies and consulting and structuring kind of framework. This, I think maybe books are still a little bit better. Here I don't have the names in mind, but I would advise for maybe more recent books. There are case study books from like I think the 70s, and they're good, but there are newer ones that do the job just as well. Maybe they're like shorter, more condensed, because I know that time is of the essence as a student. So yeah.
And I guess just finally for you both, is there anything that I guess a final piece of advice for students about getting prepared as early as possible for the recruitment drive that tends to happen in autumn?
I think you know, generally if a student has applied to a master's, there's normally quite a firm idea of what it is that they're looking for career-wise. But if that changes, that's fine. But to avoid any sort of disappointment later on, I'd always say, you know, be as application ready as possible by the end of September at the latest, really. The deadlines will close early. Students often targeting the tech giants, they'll often look at, could look at the big consultancies, large healthcare organizations, banks, you know, looking at the finance sector as well. So do remember that although your sort of first preference is obviously where you'll probably be putting your energy in and making sure your application is there in on time, make sure that you're looking at the function. So if there's a particular role that, oh yes, okay, ideally you might like to do it for the tech sector, but you could build that skill set, you could have that same responsibility somewhere else, make sure you're watching those deadlines as well. I have seen in the past when large companies, they may set a deadline, for example, the 30th of October, and then they reach capacity of the applications they're willing to consider by, say, late September, and those applications can be closed earlier. So I'd say rather than waiting, I see students, candidates every year critiquing their application to the very last minute, but say as a priority, come and see us, get your application checked, make sure you're selling yourself as much as possible. But, you know, prioritize getting things in early and showing that level of motivation rather than waiting it out.
Perfect. And what about you, Baptiste? Was there anything that you learned about applying early, or you wish you'd have done?
Yes, I think the first one is, and it's a cool thing that I learned later on. Is apply for jobs that you do not want first, fail on the jobs you don't want, so that when you get your interview, Google, whatever, you are extra ready. So that advice is linked to now my second advice, which is like, evidently, if you're the top 1%, and you get everything ready really well on September, October, and you manage to get a few interviews in, great, but normally you can't because of time, your CV is not ready, and that's fair enough. And yeah, 90% of you statistically is not going to make it because, yeah, you don't know yet. But for those of you that do, great for you. But from a statistics perspective, you like the 90%, I want you to know that it's okay. Like there is a full year of academic studies, and in that time, following the first advice, do apply for places you don't want, fail, so that then in September you compete against the new guys and girls from the masters that have no experience, and you have like a solid bulletproof CV, experience, and you make it out. And if you are the 10% who on the first month of September you make it, congrats to you. I'm jealous of you, but yeah, it's good for you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much to you both. I think the advice and the guidance you've given was super informative, and I'm sure it will help all the students that want to break into tech. So thank you both.
Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you.